بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Uh, well, welcome everybody to this podcast, and thanks everyone for joining. This is a very special podcast where we'll dive deep into the structural foundation of the modern economic system and the financial system and explore alternatives for more equitable economic alternatives. Today, we're very honored to have with us Professor Dato, Dr. Ahmed Kameel, who's an esteemed economist ahead of his time. He's authored numerous books on the global economic systems, the fiat currency, and the Islamic monetary system, which is the gold and dinar, and the Islamic economic models, which are the Awqaf and the Baitul Mal compared to the current banking system. Dr. Kameel was a former professor and dean at the International Islamic University of Malaysia, and currently he serves as a deputy vice chancellor for academic and research at University Sultan Azlan Shah in Malaysia. The doctor has a PhD from University of North Texas, and he has authored numerous books, especially this one. Anybody who's looking into any of these books, this is very good. It took me a long time. I was looking for this book for a long time, and I found it. Very good book, The Nations, The Tough Nations, and also the title of this, compared to, Adam Smith and his book, which was The Wealth of Nations. So very ironic and very interesting. And sometimes you read books and you study books and you find the academic research done for your thoughts. And this book, it has done such a phenomenal thought. Like when I read this book, it gave words to my ideas and thoughts, and it validated that with the academic research. So this is Theft of Nations, Returning to Gold from, he has multiple other books too. Today, our discussion will focus on the fall of the Bretton Woods system, what was, how it became, the fall of the Bretton Woods systems, and how it impacts the society even today, and how it impacts the global economic system and the current colonial economic system as we would have it in today's world. And we'll discuss that. And Professor has gracefully agreed to be with us. I know it's Sunday there in Malaysia. It's day off. So thank you so much, Professor, for being with us. And we'll just look forward to learning from you and to study these things with you and to see what are the actionable actions we can take from Islamic perspective as well, to have these ethical foundations of money and banking and finance from an Islamic perspective. So stay tuned, guys. It's a very important and very interesting topic. Very, very important, especially in today's context where everybody's talking about the tariffs war around the globe between, the economic powers of the world. So thank you so much, Professor, for joining. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I can start, Brother Anil?
Yes, Bismillah.
Thank you very much, Brother Reza, for the kind introduction. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadan Nabil Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Brother Reza and everyone out there, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all of you. From here, from Malaysia, so yeah, it's a Sunday morning here, while it is it's 9:06 in the morning. I guess it's about 9:06 at night on Saturday night in New Jersey. So we are
you're absolutely right. Yes,
exactly. We are on the opposite side of the globe. To 12-hour difference. Yeah. I agree with you. This is a very important topic. I realized this, the importance of this monetary issue after I returned back from the US in 1996. when I returned, the Malaysian economy was, growing tremendously. Everything was doing very well, But what happened in 97 and 98, suddenly everything collapsed, And that brought a lot of not only economic problem for Malaysia, but also political problem. If you remember, Tun Mahathir Mohamad was a very popular prime minister, and it created problem with his deputy, Mr. Anwar Ibrahim at that time, who is now the current prime minister. So it was really a not pleasant experience we went through for the last 20 years, with political and economic. So what actually happened in 97 crisis was the Malaysian currency, along with Indonesian, Thailand, and also South Korea, currency speculators attacked the currency. And they made tons of money. They made tons of money by stealing. Basically, when they do that, they're stealing the wealth of the nation by just playing with this, and they just amass a huge amount of wealth from the nation. So the nation practically lost a lot of things. So when I went back and studied what actually, made this possible, then it was clear to me it was actually the structure of the monetary system, particularly fiat money. Fiat money is money, the paper money or electronic money, that is not backed by gold, silver, or anything that is real. We call that fiat money. So before fiat money, what is the opposite to fiat money? When we were using actual gold coins or silver coins for transactions. So when silver coins and gold coins were there, we say basically it's by metallic money. When paper currency is backed by metals like gold or silver, then we call them, like a gold backing, a gold standard or silver standard, and so on. So in the entire history of mankind, there was some kind of backing. Money has always been backed by something that's real, gold, silver, and things like that. Until World War II, when America won, then a new system was established called Bretton Woods system, where countries were not required to back their currencies by gold or silver or anything. Only that they had to keep the exchange rate with the dollar a constant exchange rate. But only the US dollar was redeemable for gold. $35 was 1 ounce of gold, right? So that system is Bretton Woods. So anyone who wants the gold, you have to go to the Federal Reserve, and then you can just, surrender your dollars, and then you can redeem it for gold. So that was Bretton Woods system. But the Bretton Woods system, people predicted won't last long because, the international trade was so huge. So they had to create a lot of dollars and so on. But since the dollar was the only currency at the time backed by gold, so it made the most dominant currency. People want dollar because that's the only currency that can be redeemed for gold. But that system in 1971, 72, it collapsed also. During President Nixon's time, because why? In order to finance the Vietnam War, US started to put in a lot of dollars, but not backed by gold. So some world leaders realized that. Then President de Gaulle of France, he brought his dollar reserves and wanted to redeem for gold, and the window was closed. So there's no more redeemability for dollar for gold. Yeah. So it was ended. Then the entire world became 100% just fiat. That means there is no link between the monetary side and the real side, the real economy. So, so central banks can simply create the currency as much they want. But of course, if they simply create as much as they want, then can create inflation and so on. Those are the factors that can, check so that you don't create too much of fiat money. Because if you create too much of fiat money, then it will become inflationary. But when you look at the data for almost any country in the world, it is since Bretton Woods collapsed in 1971, the creation of fiat money has always been much faster than the growth of the economy.
Hmm.
This is the first, when I teach my course on monetary economics, this is the first assignment I give to my students. What they will do, they will get the data from the central banks of the countries. They go to their websites or World Bank database and so on. They get the monetary aggregates, then the real economy, the GDP on a real GDP. Then they will plot the graphs and then find the equation of the exponential. Normally, both will grow slightly exponentially. Yeah. So the exponential equation, and I ask them to find out which graph are they in tandem, growing in tandem, or which one grows faster than the other. And without fail, for almost every country, the growth of my monetary aggregate has been always faster than the growth of a real economy until today. Okay. So that's why we find that almost everywhere in the world, our monetary system is inflationary. There's always inflation in the economy. And we were brought up from childhood, when we observe the economy, the prices go up like this. So we think it's part of life. Part of economy, that prices must go up, But
Yeah.
but that's not the truth. So in the present monetary system, some people actually gain and some people lose. Yeah. So this is just a background I'm giving. If you allow me to use my slides, then
Oh,
I'll
please, Professor, please.
then I will use my
Definitely.
slides to show.
Very interesting, like, understanding, like, you
Yeah.
saw a problem, you looked into it from academic perspective,
Hmm.
and you did your research analysis.
Correct.
And, we'll discuss a little bit more about this too, as you talk about, even in your book, you talk about aggregate analysis and the
Correct.
aggregate uh, interest. So please, Professor,
Yeah.
uh, let's share
But
the.
excuse me. So this is the title of the presentation: Lessons from Post-Bretton Woods, the Global Fiat Money System, and the Warranted Monetary Reforms. So in order to appreciate this, I will need to show what actually this present monetary system is doing.
Hmm.
The economy, to the people, to the environment, so that we can find a solution and then we can appreciate the solution. Yeah. So we need to
Okay.
understand the problems, the effects first. Yeah. So I already mentioned about Bretton Woods. It ended in 1971. So this is the graph I was telling you about. You see the growth of the monetary aggregate. We can take the M2 or M3 as the monetary aggregate. What is our M2, M3? M0 is your coins and notes like this. The coins and notes, we define it M0.
Okay.
M1 is the coins and notes plus demand deposits in the banks. Your demand deposit, because demand deposits are simply accounting numbers. They don't represent. They are not represented by dollars and notes, physical dollars and notes like this. Yeah. So, for example, if you transfer some dollars to somebody using your ATM machine or electronic transfers, so no coins or notes are involved, just accounting numbers. Yeah. So those demand deposits plus the coins and notes, we define them as M1. So M2 are higher definitions. For example, time deposits and others are added. So as you go higher and higher, still money, but then they are a bit less liquid. Money is added into the monetary aggregate. So that monetary aggregate, let's say M2, if you think it grows like the red line there, exponential growth.
Hmm.
And the real economy it also slightly grows, but is green in color. So it's creating a difference in the growth. More and more money going after a smaller amount of goods and services. So that system creates what we call inflation. We also sometimes use the word bubbles, like stock market bubble or .com bubble and so on. So bubbles are actually also inflation. It's just that when it happens in a certain sector, we call that a bubble, or if there's a housing bubble. That means there's inflationary in the housing sector. And so on. And this system also creates a widening gap between the rich and the poor. Why? Why? Because most of the money is created by the commercial banks in the form of loans. This is very important to understand. We think that most of the money are dollars and notes and coins like that. No, those are issued by the central banks, and they represent only about 5% and below. For the US, it's less than 2% or maybe 1% only dollars and notes. The rest are all accounting numbers. And for Malaysia and many other countries also same, it is all, mostly are just numbers, accounting numbers in the books and in our computer database and so on. All right. So these the numbers, whether they are in accounting numbers in the computer database and so on, these were created for the first time in the form of loans. That we need to understand. They create the money out of nothing and they give it to you at interest. So if you go to a bank and you say, okay, I would like to buy a house, the money for you to purchase the house when the bank gives you the loan is not taking the deposits of anybody. But the picture given to us is, oh, they're taking the deposits of the depositors and then lending the money to us to buy the house. But it's not like that. It is new money creation and lent to the borrower and normally given at compound interest. And compound interest is mathematically, it's an exponential function. You see the equation here? The future value is what you have to pay back. The present PV is the amount of loan. So the loan multiplied by 1 plus the interest rate to the power of n, the time period you're taking to pay back the loan, is how much you have to pay back, the total you got to pay back in the future, which is the present value plus the interest. And this equation is an exponential function because the time is a power in the equation. So this is how the compound interest works. So because it's exponential, the amount of money grows exponentially. The amount of debt in the economy also grows exponentially because the money is created in the form of debt. You see that? Or in the form of loans. So because of that, both money and debt in the economy, they both grow exponentially. You see? So when the money is created out of nothing, must be given to somebody in the form of loans, right? And normally it's given to the wealthier people or wealthier sections of the economy, companies, large companies, and so on. If you are very poor, you go to the bank, you will not get your loan approved, right? So the money is given, the money that's created out of nothing is also given to the wealthier section of the economy. So that's why the system creates a widening gap between the rich and the poor. All right. But when such a structure creates inflation, the inflation got to be borne by everybody, whether you are rich or whether you're poor, you have got to bear the consequences. So the poor fellow not only can't get any much financing from the banks, but he got to bear the inflation together with the rich. Yeah. So Milton Friedman, a Nobel laureate in monetary economics, is a famous monetarist, right? He mentioned inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. So I totally agree with him. It's a monetary phenomenon in the sense that it is, hold on.
Because Milton Friedman, right? Yep.
Yeah, okay, it's Milton Friedman, yeah. So that is, it can be produced only by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in output. So he has summarized nicely what I was saying, right? So this is the actual reason. So inflation of today is by the structure of the monetary system of today. But as I mentioned earlier, but we all think because we have been conditioned from childhood that the price of things always grow. So we think it is part of life, or okay, it is maybe it is, but actually the monetary structure is causing it. When I was in Malaysia in childhood, 1970s, this is my favorite example. Okay, during my childhood, we go for breakfast. If you've been to Malaysia, breakfast we take something called roti chana. It's made from wheat flour.
Okay.
Roti. So that roti was 10 cents per piece, right? Today it's about 150 to 180, 1 ringgit, 80 cent, 1 ringgit, almost 2 ringgit if you go to.
Okay.
So imagine how many times the price has gone up, how many percentage, the last, same as coffee. Coffee or tea used to be also 10 cents. Now it's about 250, 2 ringgit to 250 like that. This is the ordinary shop, coffee shops you're talking about for ordinary people. But if you go to Starbucks or you go to hotels, the price is of course different. Yeah, I'm talking about the affordability of the ordinary person. So this is the how the prices have gone up in Malaysia. Yeah, and currently it is growing very fast. I'll show you why it's growing very fast in Malaysia. Yeah. All right. Okay, see, all right. So
Yeah.
this is a simple equation. Normally, people say in talks don't show equations, but this is a very simple equation. I would like you to know this. You don't have to know any other. If you, at the end of the talk, at least if you remember the name of this equation, I'll be happy. Okay, it's called the equation of exchange. The equation of exchange, it links the monetary side of the economy to the real side of the economy. The M here, it is the monetary aggregate quantity of money in the system called like M2, I'm talking M2 or M1. And this is the velocity of money circulation. So certain amount of money is circulating in the economy a number of times. And that's creating economic output. So if this is only 100, and then this velocity is 3 times, so 100 amount of money has circulated 3 times, so it is 300 worth, a dollar worth or whatever, dollar worth of items that have been transacted in the economy. That is the real side, and multiply by the price. This is the P is the price level, and this is the real output. The chairs, table, food, whatever we produce, that's the real thing. So the price times the quantity of output, it is explained by the money and how many times it circulates in the economy. Right? So the velocity of money circulation is normally a constant, 2 times or 3 times. They don't change unless something shocks the economy. Okay? So in the economy, the money, just now I showed you, the monetary side grows exponentially, but the Y, the real side, does not grow to match the growth in M. And since velocity is constant, so the price level must go up to match the balance. Okay, that? So the price level must go up to. So this is the situation that is taking place all the time. All right. So you see in Malaysia, it is a bit, 2020 data, but it explains everything. When I used to originally about 20 years ago, when I highlighted this issue, then at that time, certain amount of money in Malaysia was circulating a certain amount of times and producing the gross domestic product GDP of so much, nominal GDP, right? So the money must be always, the amount of money needed to produce a certain amount of GDP is always less than the GDP. Why? Because there's the money is circulating a number of times. There's a velocity thing there, right? If this is 300 and money velocity is 3, so M needed is only 100. 100 times 3 is 300. So the amount of money is circulating is always less than the GDP. But if you see today, like in 2020, let me take the M1 only, M1, which is the coins and notes plus the demand deposits in the bank. That's 513 billion, because this is in millions, millions.
Oh, wow.
513 billion. But if you notice, the nominal GDP is only 300. The amount of money in the system is more than the nominal GDP of the country itself. This is, to me, is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Because this money is going to, also, will circulate in some velocity will be there. So that's the reason I say since 2020, and when I look at it, Malaysia, the prices are growing up tremendously, especially food items, housing. These are basic necessities you're talking about. Food, housing, all are rising tremendously because you have not properly checked the growth of money. And you can see in some countries, like I don't want to mention, but if you go to some country in South America and so on, and the growth of money can be as high as 200%. You see, in Malaysia, the growth is only about 9.6%, or you can say about 10%, yeah. Whereas the real GDP in the last 5 years, 2015 to 2020, only about 4%.
Wow.
So this is the difference that's causing. But some countries, the growth of money is like 200%. That's absolutely crazy. So if I see a data like that, or in this country the money is growing at 100% or 200%, immediately it will tell me, if I go to that country, I will see a small group of people extremely wealthy and a large number of people very poor, and inflation will be just hyperinflation will be there. So it is just enriching a small number of people at the expense of the majority of the people. If you see large growth rates in monetary aggregate, see that? So this, for example, this is a Malaysian data for housing. This is old data, and the institute that produces it, the Khazanah Research Institute from one of the GLCs, and they have not released the latest data yet because we all have been highlighting this. You see, this is the price, the average price of the homes in Malaysia. For affordability of homes, the standard is your 3-year income. Your 3 year of income, total income, is what is defined as affordable price of a home that you could afford. 3 years of total income. So in Malaysia, it's already 5 times. That means you need 5 years of, say, this thing, total income, in order to buy the average home in Malaysia, which is in a definition of affordability, it is seriously unaffordable. But that was in 2016, 9 years ago. Now it is actually, even the following year, we know it is actually severely unaffordable. So if you talk to the ordinary youngsters, our children, even my children, they all say, Papa, we can't afford a home in this country. See that?
Same thing in US, like right
Yeah.
now, the mortgages are like 30 years.
Yes, correct. You see? So there is something working behind all this. What is that? It is the overcreation of money in the system. It's overcreation of money that is enriching a small number of people at the expense. So this is the behind that we need to we need to address. So as I mentioned, not only it is creating inflation. Okay, when we say inflation, that means the housing is going up and things going, and other price of your the cost of education of your children, all when they go up, we say the cost of living is rising, right? Cost of living rising. And since money is created in the form of loans in the system, you will find individuals, households, debt, total household debts will rise. The debt of businesses will also rise. And the debt of government will also rise.
Right.
So that's crazy. Households, the businesses, the government, all become debtors. So this is, a couple of years ago, the Central Bank of Malaysia reported the Malaysia's household debt to GDP ratio surges to a new peak of
94%, like 93% almost.
GDP. Can you imagine? This is only the household debt.
Wow.
What about if you add the business debt? And what about add the government debt? And how much does the government own? The government debt is 1.2 trillion.
Wow.
1.2 trillion. And a majority of people, we do not realize how large a trillion is. Like in the US government debt is about, if I'm not mistaken, it's about $70 trillion for US. Malaysia, luckily, we are 1. So even if at the rate of 3.5% of interest rate, and if the government were able to pay 46 billion per year, it will take about 70 years to settle the debt. But in Malaysian budgeting, to be frank with you, we cannot pay 46 billion. Most of our income today from revenue from, that we can get, it is just almost enough for the administration of the government. So for development and to pay back old loans, the government is forced to actually borrow money. Unfortunately, Malaysia has come to that position. You see, so we should not never bring a country to that kind of position where for development of the nation, the financing needed to develop the nation and to pay back old loans, you need to borrow money. You know, like 1.2 trillion. If you pay back 1 million per day, 1 million per day you pay back. That means in 1 year you would have paid back 365 million, isn't it? Correct? So if I ask you, how long do you think it will take just to pay back the principal of 1.2 trillion? How long? 1 million per day. Every day you pay back 1 million, 1 million, 1 million. It will take
So
you,
just
yeah. Because we cannot imagine how big a trillion is because we normally don't deal with such large numbers.
right.
But to show you how large that number is, if you pay back a million per day, it will take you about 4,000 years to pay back just the principal.
4,000 years.
Yes. That means if
Wow.
you started paying your 1 million when Isa alayhi salam was born, 500 years you have paid, then you see Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam being born, Until today you have paid 2,000 years and you still have another 2,000 years to go.
Oh, wow.
That's how big a trillion
A
is.
trillion is.
I
Yeah,
mean,
we're not talking about billion here. We're talking about trillion.
So this is the situation. How do you pay back everything? So I know this, people, we cannot pay back such loans. We cannot pay back. America will not be able to pay back 70 trillion. So what is needed is, how did we get into this situation? Because we allowed the system to create money out of nothing and lend to people at interest. That nothing is the one behind it causing such a thing to actually exist. So the solution is definitely what? All such loans got to be, you need to write them off.
Okay.
That cancellation is the final solution to this thing. We need to.
Would that be something we would call like a deflation, like a market reset?
So if you ask me, the Reza, the Malaysia, America, and all these countries, we have brought our situation. I'll show you in a moment why the entire world economy has also become unsustainable, creating havoc now. And the solution to all this is actually address the monetary issue. And I say not only interest is riba, but fiat money, paper money is also riba because it is creating purchasing power out of nothing.
Right. Right.
You see? So this
or
is
out of debt.
Out of debt. Not only debt, and then it's creating out of nothing, So that means you're creating debt out of nothing. So this is the structure we need to address, and I'll show you, in a moment. And among all these things, it is creating, other than the sustainability issues, one of the most important thing is the shrinking population. Even Elon Musk has been addressing this issue. If you go to his YouTube videos, he always said there's going to be a population collapse. There's going to be a population collapse and everything. It is also because of the structure of the monetary system. I will show you in a moment. Yeah. Because why it is important to address the population issue.
Professor, I have a question. Should I ask you right now,
Yeah, go ahead.
or
Can ask.
So when we're talking about these systems, and I know we are very early in our discussions, right?
Yeah.
And this money is created out of nowhere,
Yeah.
right? And when they talk about quote unquote the Islamic banking,
Mm.
they're getting the money from the same place. So how do they validate that in their systems?
You mean the Islamic banks?
Yes.
No, they justify this thing. They are part of the system. I've talked to many CEOs of the Islamic bank. They know we are part of the current system. If you want to change this, then the central bank must change the system for us. They always argue like that. That's why I tell
No,
you.
but like for example, in Pakistan, right? Like there's they just passed this law and they're talking about, okay, the Pakistan has to be interest free in so many years, which again, they passed that law, but of course, getting there is a big deal, a long walk. But my point being is, as long as we have the same, like the state bank, as we call it, the central bank, right? Instead of having like a Baitul Mal or the Awqaf, and one of the things people do not understand about Baitul Mal is it's not currency. It is actual commodities.
Exactly.
It's actual commodities. It's like actual physical assets. It's not
physical assets, correct.
you know. And so, but like whenever we have had discussions with some of the ulama regarding that, they somehow justify that they are not lending money from the bank, from
Mm.
at least the bank,
Mm.
on like the central bank,
Yeah.
on interest. But they're
Mm.
still taking money, and they're like, they're calling it profit and they're restructuring it, but still like the part of that. So that is like this little nuance is what I'm trying to clarify for the audience as well.
Mm. Mm. Correct. They try to justify the thing that they're not, but what basically is Islamic banks and these people are saying is that, well, there is money. That means they've accepted the fiat money. Then from then onwards, whatever we are doing, for example, financing of home, financing of cars, or business, and so on. From then onwards, then it is, the contracts are Islamic contracts, whatever contracts, Islamically
Mm,
acceptable contracts, right? So they justify this thing from the contracts. Yes, we agree the contracts are fine. But once the beginning of the contract is actually the financing starts from fiat money, that
mm.
the Islamic bank is also creating
The debt.
fiat money, then it is actually it makes the entire thing un-Islamic. Normally, how I show that to my students is like this. When let's say I'm a Islamic bank, I would like someone comes and says the person wants to finance a car, buy a car, and asking
Mm.
for finance. So I create money out of nothing actually in the books, all right?
Right.
Then I will buy, for example, let's say Murabaha contract. I'll buy the car then using the money created from the seller. I buy the car and sell the car to the customer here after markup for my profit.
Mm.
All right. Let's say the car is $20,000, a markup of let's say $5, 5,000, so 25,000. Then I sell the car for 25,000 to the what do you call that, to the customer at deferred payment. So the person might take 5 years or whatever to pay back the financing. So that portion is okay. It looks Islamically okay. I'm buying the car from the seller and I'm selling it back to the customer here at a markup profit of 5,000. Looks perfectly okay. But what it is not okay is when I create the 20,000 originally out of nothing, creating the purchasing power out of nothing to buy the car from the seller, what happens is actually I'm creating inflation in the system because now there's more money in the system and the real things are just the same thing there when I'm
Mm.
creating my 20,000. So whoever had savings in the economy, their purchasing power of the savings will go down a little bit because prices are going to go up
Mm.
slightly. So the total amount of purchasing power lost in the economy, it is the purchasing power I created to buy the car from the seller. You see that? So
Wow.
when a bank creates money out of nothing, it is actually stealing purchasing power from the rest of the economy.
Mm.
And then now buying the car and selling it at a profit to the customer. So
Mm.
it is something like this. Something like this. Now the billah, just as an example, I steal a car, right, from somebody, and then I go to a Muslim fella and then I sign an Islamically acceptable contract. I sell the car at Murabaha to him.
Mm.
So the guy, see, yeah, it's a Murabaha contract, it's a totally halal, yes, but the car was stolen,
Mm. Yeah.
that part is not seen. So in the
Mm.
economy, when Islamic banks create money out of nothing and they finance things according to Islamic contracts, it is actually stealing from the economy, the
Mm.
purchasing power. See that? So that is
Yeah.
the, that is the issue behind. So that is the reason.
Absolutely.
That is the reason money must be real. Just like when the transactions. So what can be money? Many there are characteristics for that. We'll come to that. Maybe I'm not sure whether I have a slide for that in this one, but we can discuss that. Okay.
Inshallah.
All right. So here, so in this system, we notice the debt of households, businesses, government in the present system is always rising of these three sectors. Then in accounting, we know for every debtor, there must be a creditor. So if all these major sectors in the economy are debtors, so who are the creditors in the system? So it's no other than the banking system, which we have given the legal right to create money out of nothing and give to all these as loans. You see?
But
So
that's just a legal right. It is nothing monetary. Like it's not a function of economy.
yes, exactly. But unfortunately, today it's a legal right for them, isn't it? They have legally they're allowed to create money out of nothing, and they're lending to people. So they are become the creditors of the system.
Hmm.
You see? So anybody who doesn't care about riba or this thing, that is the best business to do, huh? You go and sit there. Right? You are given the right to become rich out of nothing. Yeah. So that is the structure of the present system. But we can see because one sector, the monetary sector, is growing exponentially compared to the real sector, it creates a lot of unsustainable effects in the economy. It has effects on economy, the society, the environment, politics, the shrinking of population, and so on. In economy, I just showed you, it creates inflation, it creates a gap between wealth and income, gap between the rich and poor, a constant rising in the cost of living. It has effects on agriculture also because when in this kind of system, if if the farmers will be forced to borrow money to finance in for agriculture, normally it may look agriculture will look not attractive in this present system. You know why? If an interest rate is, let's say, 6%, you can only invest in a plant or something that can give you 6% return or grow 6% within a year. Otherwise, it will be a loss. Agriculture cannot match the compounding interest because agriculture doesn't grow exponentially. So that is the reason in most countries with this structure, you would find governments are forced to give subsidies to farmers, right? They have agriculture banks that gives loans much lower rate compared to the normal rate. So such a system, it has effects on agriculture. Agriculture will look unattractive in this system, yeah? And unaffordable homes that I mentioned. So these are some of the what do you call the effects on economy, including the recession cycles, up and down. So I have no time to explain that here. What happens is that when the debt grows in the economy, after a certain level, when the economy is unable to bear the debt, it will collapse. When it collapses means when people are unable to pay back the loan, the money supply in the economy will start to shrink. Supply. So everything will fall when the recession takes place. Then the governments will be forced to take expansionary monetary policies, like printing new money. Like America, we call it quantitative easing. Like America, the word quantitative easing means creating new money. That's one. Or you can reduce the reserve requirement ratio and so forth. Or even you can even lower the interest rates, play with the interest rates to create back the money in the system. But this will create up and down in the economy. That's why we have economy going up and down, recession, then boom, then recession, boom, like that. It's because of the debt structure in the economy. So when the economy goes down, recessionary time, then it will create unemployment and so forth. So the economic cycle is also part of this caused by this kind of monetary structure. And in society, if you notice, when it creates poverty, when, because of the income, wealth and income gap, some people become very rich, and then a lot of people poor means, then you'll create a lot of crime in the society because the poor people will do property crime just for survival, right? And interest rate, it has effects on environment, just like I mentioned to you earlier. For example, Malaysia and Indonesian countries, we have very nice rainforests. Or you have for oil, like in countries. So international institutions, financial institutions, World Bank, IMF, they like to lend money to these kind of countries. Why? Because the interest portion can only be repaid in real terms. See, the problem, brother, is all these things I'm saying, I have to show you the structure so that you can, see it. The statement I'm making, interest portion of loans can only be repaid in real terms, not in monetary, But why? Because when the banks create money and then push it into the economy as at interest, let's say 1 million is pushed into the economy and 10% is the interest. So you need to pay back extra 100,000, the 10%. But the extra money does not exist in the form of money in the system. Only the 1 million is circulating, right? So the 100,000 interest can be only repaid in real terms, whatever you produce, handphones or real things. So when you pay back a small amount of installment back to the banks, and the money is distributed to its workers and everything, and then the bank spends the money back into the economy.
Absolutely.
Yes, then only the same amount, and so the total interest is actually collected in form of real things.
And to pay back the interest, as you said, we have to
Mm.
borrow more money from the
Yeah.
same source to pay. As you've described it very much in detail in your book,
Yeah,
as well.
correct.
When I read that, the very first chapter, actually, you discussed this.
Yes, true. Because that structure is important to understand. Then you know,
Mhm.
for example, how environments are being destroyed, especially in countries like Indonesia, Malaysia. Why? Because if you borrow a large amount of money from World Bank or IMF or things like institutions like that, the interest portion got to be repaid in your real resources. So if you have oil, then you're actually paying them in oil and things like that. But when you have a rainforest, you cut down the timber, you cut down the trees, when the interest rate goes up, then you find deforestation also goes up.
Hmm.
You see that? So these are the and ultimately we create climate change and things like that. So we have destroyed the global economy with such a monetary system actually. So now we are jumping like as the fish out of the water. Or we need to solve the unsustainability issues. The climate is changing too fast, and it is that kind of and on politics also it creates conflicts and wars, and I would like to in a moment go to this important aspect of shrinking population that's causing aging problem in countries, labor shortages and so on, which is actually becoming a very acute problem in many economies. I will address that in a moment. Yeah. So this what I'm trying to show with this slide is that the structure of the monetary system is causing a lot of variables in the economy, both economic variables and social variables and environmental variables. They become unsustainable. I said that in many years ago, about 20 years ago, the structure, the monetary system will create many variables in the economy, become unsustainable. So sure enough, and United Nations came up with Sustainable Development Goals, right? So this is 17 Sustainable Development Goals we need to address and so on. Well, all good and all are good, but I tell my students, but I can assure you, until and unless we address the monetary structure, all these problems we will not be able to solve them, because one of the major source of this unsustainability is coming from the structure of the monetary system that is riba based.
Absolutely.
The
And there's
riba.
like so one of the things I wanted, I don't know, like, can I ask a question now? Or so, like, one of the things that started with Bretton Woods was, the IMF and the, what we today call world banks and all of that, right? So what is the impact of that? And if you can elaborate a little bit more on that, how it impacts, what we will call like economic colonialism, right?
Yeah,
Around the,
exactly. These institutions, their job is to lend money to developing nations, particularly with resources. Then they'll force you to, basically you're going to pay back the interest and things like that through the resource of the nation. To me, these institutions have played the role of the colonial objectives. They were actually helping in order to acquire the colonial objectives. Yeah, many World Bank and IMF have been shown to do that. Even who's that? The book written by the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, Anthony Perkins, right?
was it?
The book by the Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Right, exactly. Michael something, I think his name is, I forgot.
No, yeah, okay.
Yes, anyways, I do remember that book though, please.
So
Yeah.
that book, I'm talking about the thing. He shows that they actually worked for these institutions in order to in that countries, and ultimately they'll hit them, economically. So this has been going on for many years. But unfortunately, the poor countries are poor. Sometimes you are unable to do anything. Also, when they show this kind of loans on you, you're forced to accept sometimes. Yeah. So
Mhm.
this is the reason why all these nations are in such a situation, and then they will force them to go into austerity programs in order to pay back the loans. And austerity means your consumption. The poor are already poor, and then you also restrict their consumptions and things like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that is the situation that has been going on for until now. So
But
all these variables, Brother Reza, I'm saying that we cannot achieve sustainability unless we address the monetary, um, what do you call it, a sustainable and stable and just monetary system. You know.
and that is one of the things, as we're talking about like the just economic system, like, and as we're talking about like from an Islamic perspective, right?
Hmm.
Because the concept of zakat is to give the money from the rich to the poor, and
Hmm.
it should essentially create an economic equilibrium. But right now, when let's say the zakat percentage is like 2.5%, and
Hmm.
inflation is 30%, the
Yeah,
zakat will not even cover the inflation, let alone like equilibrium. So
exactly.
like either they have to adjust the equation,
Yeah. And
like to actually make it worthwhile,
hmm.
or it's just defeating the purpose. But that's why it's so important to have an asset-backed
Money-
monetary system.
True. Totally agree. You rightly pointed out when the interest rate is higher than the zakat rate, then the economy is,
Not
then
only the interest rate, professor, also the inflation rate,
yeah, of course.
right? Of course, interest rate is more than the
Yeah,
inflation rate is exponential, as you just mentioned earlier, like with that graph was going up in the heavens,
correct.
you know.
Mm. So this I totally agree. You see, so this is so basically we're talking about the unsustainability issue of this thing, right? So I always
Mm.
tell my students we need two more objectives for in order to achieve the sustainable development goals. One is I say real money systems, that have some form of gold standard or whatever. Actually, it can be backed by anything that is real, not only gold and silver. It can be even petroleum. It can be even wheat or rice,
Mm.
Uh,
Right.
You remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, gold for gold, silver for silver, wheat for wheat, barley for barley, salt for salt, dates for dates, all must be exchanged in equal quantities. Any exchange in unequal quantities can have what do you call that? A rebound. Remember
Mhm.
something in
Right. Right. Correct.
that
Correct.
that something like that, right? So if you notice the commodities mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith, all of them have the characteristics of money. And they did
Mm.
play the role of money
When
in
you
the
say the characteristics of money, what do you mean by that? What are the characteristics of
example,
money?
commodity. When you say characteristics of money or anything that you want to use commodity as money, first it must have its intrinsic value in it. That means people
Mm.
want it because it has some value. So if it's rice, okay, with rice we can eat. Wheat also we can eat. Gold,
Mm.
people love gold for jewelry or whatever, right? And silver also. And all these things have people value them. And
Mm.
it must be divisible into smaller quantities.
Mm.
A goal, if I have a gold bar, if I cut exactly into half, I don't have to ask you, do you like which half do you want? Right? But there is isn't it? Because they are homogeneous.
Mm.
Homogeneous means it is equal. If I cut means it's equal. If I
Mm.
take a cup of rice from a sack a cup of
Mm.
rice, and another cup, rice from the same sack, it is equivalent, isn't it? So we call it homogeneous. So it has to be homogeneous. It must be divisible. So the divisible, it can be, I can buy small amount, I can buy a large amount of, whatever, right? So it's divisible in that way. And also it must be mobile. I can easily bring it here and there, so that I can go to the market. I can use that to buy things, right? So these are, and it has to be rare. The rarity has connection to it is, what do you call that, the value. So if it is rare, a small quantity will have a high value, just like
Mm. And
so.
it has to be I think it can sustain, right? And it is like what let me think of the word that I'm looking for. Like
Uh,
for the money, it cannot decay. In other
yes,
words,
correct. That's another, that means it has it can last long, durable,
right,
durable, yeah.
durable, right?
Durable. So durability is, for example, like if I use wheat as money or rice as money, maybe it can durable for a year or two. So within
Hmm.
a year, I can use it as money because it can get spoiled. After 1 year, maybe water or even this pest, like rats can, they can also go and eat some of the rice, right? So there are some aspects within a year, it can play a good role of money,
Hmm.
especially food items. So while we mention all these things have the characteristics of money, when it comes to durability, some of these things will dominate. For example, gold and silver.
Hmm.
That's the
How
reason why.
about oil though, right? Oil is
Yeah,
flammable, so to speak.
correct. Like palm oil, the petroleum, are very
Yeah.
good candidates for money.
Hmm.
Very good
But they're
candidate.
flammable though, right? So wouldn't
It's
that like
flammable, but we know how to store them, and we can create a monetary system using electronic monetary systems. Maybe one of these days, it has to be a separate talk. How we can structure it to become money. That means
that is a
electronic
very
records
important
will
talk
be,
to have?
yes, electronic records can be moved around as money, but
Hmm.
whoever needs the petroleum or oil, you can just redeem it from the warehouse.
Hmm.
You know.
So like Bitcoin, you can be used for that, for those purposes in a legitimate way.
Yes. Bitcoin for me, cryptocurrencies are good, but you
Hmm.
must back them with real assets.
Hmm.
Just like Venezuela issued a cryptocurrency backed by its petroleum.
Hmm.
Now
Right.
that, I know. But
Or
if
gold.
gold or anything, yes. Like the gold one is like 1 gram in Dubai.
Hmm.
UAE, one company issued a cryptocurrency backed by gold. These are
Hmm.
very, very good system. This is what
Hmm.
we must move towards to, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. The blockchain, right?
Yeah,
Right.
blockchain technology, but backed by real
Hmm.
things.
Absolutely. Yep. That's a very good.
Yeah,
So buying itself is like again, it's just like a tool. You can use a tool the right way or the wrong way.
yeah, correct. Only when the cryptocurrency is backed by something real like this, its value will be stable because the value will reflect the value of the underlying asset. Let's say you
And
will
that's so,
link it.
Professor, when we're talking about this, and you mentioned like the Indonesian collapse and Malaysian collapse,
Yeah.
one of the very key aspects of those was the stock markets
Mm,
and how the stock markets manipulate the economy,
yeah, correct.
you know.
Yes.
And so I wanted to just get your thoughts on that. Like, how do you think that impact?
Yeah.
And should we have stock markets the way they are? I
Yeah,
mean, if you're talking about like economic structures, I mean, you're talking about the banking systems.
correct. The thing, Reza, when you create a lot of money into the system, right?
Hmm.
And then it's going to create inflation and rising cost of living for the people, and it's going to impact the poor disproportionately, right? So that is the reason, in order to this thing, most governments, they fix the price of basic necessities. Fix the price. For example, the price of rice is fixed, price of sugar is controlled, price of oil is controlled. They control it. But then the excess money will go to price something in the economy. So what they do, they push all this money into certain sectors, especially the stock market, the property market, and derivatives market. Derivatives.
Hmm.
So push all this money into these markets, right?
Hmm.
So you push the money into this market, then you will find the stock market. So that's the reason you will find wealthy people are generally invested in these sectors.
Hmm.
You must hold some shares. You must have some property, something like that, because this is the area where excess money will be parked. So when you look into housing, for example, like if you come to Malaysia, you'll see there are so many, like apartments and condos built, almost nobody there. You go to a floor, you see one or two people only occupying the units, the rest are all empty. But yet the price goes up. Every year you see the price of the units go up. In economics, when there's excess supply, prices should go down. But these sectors will show, even with
You're
excess,
right.
yeah,
It's a principle of macroeconomics, right? I remember
yeah,
that they taught us.
yeah. These sectors will show, even with excess supply, our prices will go up. Because this is the sectors that is absorbing the excess money supply. Stock market, these property markets, and also derivatives. You'll be surprised by the Reza, in derivatives market. This was a couple of years ago, because I didn't see that. I don't see all the time the data. The amount of money that is parked in a derivatives market was estimated to be $1 quadrillion.
That's way past trillion as well.
You know what trillion is? 1,000 trillion. 1,000 trillion is 1 quadrillion.
Wow.
Huge amount of money is being parked there. So I always tell people, what will ultimately bring down the collapse of the present monetary system? It is actually the derivatives market.
Hmm.
That's where most of the money is being parked. And it can be, whenever they need money to do funny things, political maneuvering and things like that throughout the world, financing arms and things like that, can be usually when you need money, you just take that money from the money parked in the derivatives market and play these kind of games. You see? Because it's all fiat, created out of nothing. So that's the reason we need to understand the importance of real money, the importance of backing paper money or electronic money by real assets. It can be gold, it can be silver, it can be petroleum, it can be water, it can be any wheat flour, we can
Professor,
start.
I think one of the aspects is, and this isn't always a very interesting study for me,
Yeah,
especially in today's market when we're talking about the tariffs,
yeah,
between, US and other countries.
yeah,
China is a very good case studies of like kind of like getting out of this
yeah,
system and becoming like more um self-sustainable, I guess I would say.
yeah, correct.
So how do you see that, even though they do not have like our Islamic dinar
Correct,
and
correct,
dinar system,
correct.
right?
Yeah,
Right, but they still are able to be
to
to
where
be
they are now,
independent of
isn't
these
it?
systems.
To where they are now, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
It's like this, Brother Reza. If you look, for example, a country that is very poor, take a poor country like in African countries or in any part of the world, when they're poor, like China also, initially it was very poor, right, under communism.
Mm,
But they have a large population, right?
mm,
When you introduce even fiat money like this,
mm,
with interest, fiat money, it will create liquidity. It makes possible for trade to take place, right? Even though it has this thing. So the initial impact that is able to let people do transactions, it will improve their economic well-being first, initially. So
mm,
even in this present system, like we are living in Malaysia, you are living in the US, even though we are living in the in the interest-based system, okay, some of us, because we have a good job or things like that, we have a reasonable this thing, but still many are having a not so good life because of maybe they're on the bottom rung of the economic system and so forth, right? It has that gap. So the liquidity provided by the fiat monetary system initially, it actually improves the well-being of everyone. Then
mm.
then later part of this thing, then it will create a division, or some of the guys become very rich, and then the people become poor, right? Now the poorer sections will start to make certain decisions. I want to show you the shrinking population. The shrinking
Mm.
population now will kick in, and finally you will make the entire economic structure unsustainable. So if you ask me,
And
the ultimate collapse of the capitalism is one way is because it will come from the population collapse.
so you think like societies like Japan and China,
Yes.
like where they have restrictions, and
Yes.
and culturally like they do not have as many children, I would say. I wouldn't say like
No, no,
culture,
no.
but like
It's
in their
not
current system.
culturally. It's not culturally.
Hmm.
Culturally, if you notice, just one generation before, or two generations
Hmm.
from 1970s, yeah, one
Hmm.
generation before, I'm talking about 1970s, all of us, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, all of us, we had many children. If you look at it,
Hmm.
I'll give you the data in a moment. for average of 5 to 6 children, even Indians and this thing. A family can easily have 5 children.
Hmm.
Now you see it is 1 or 0.
Hmm.
It
You're
is,
right. It's not culture, but it is
I
imposed. Like in
actually,
certain cases, it was enforced by the state. Like
yes,
in, you know,
in China, yes, it was initially imposed by the state, the one child policy. Now they realize it is a mistake. They
and the
try to,
problem is that whenever you have one child, they normally would say the male child versus the female child, and
correct.
now they don't have the reproductive, you
Yes,
know.
yes. That is another problem, you know? That's another problem. And that's a big problem actually, you know? So this is the, so ultimately I see, even if you go on like this, to me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing, if you base your system on riba,
Hmm. Hmm.
ultimately you can't even sustain your population. Whatever you do, I mean,
Subhanallah.
you can't,
Subhanallah.
you can't even sustain your population. Whatever you do, I will show you a quote by Lee Kuan Yew in a moment on that.
Okay.
So this is the situation, but this is one research and work done by a person called Bernard Lighter, Bernard
Hmm.
Lighter, Bernard
Hmm.
Lietaer, this one. Bernard Lighter is he was actually a friend of mine, but he was a central banker of Belgium. He passed away already a couple of years ago during the COVID time. He's a central banker of Belgium, and he wrote one book called The Future of Money.
Oh, wow. Yes.
I think if I were to encourage anybody to buy a book and understand all what we're discussing in an interesting way, you must get this book,
Future of money.
Future of Money. Beautifully written. I just like his way of writing. So it will explain a lot of things about money. He was once, voted as the top currency trader in the world.
Oh, wow.
And then he said, "Oh, this thing cannot go on." He realized that this cannot go on like this.
It is essentially what it is. It's like a Ponzi scheme for a bad mud.
Uh,
We call it like Ponzi scheme here. I don't know if you have like, which is like, you take money from one person, give it to somebody else, then give money from somebody else and give it to somebody else. And
yeah,
you just play juggling with the money.
correct. And then he wrote this book, and then he did this study on sustainability, and he wrote this book, Money: The Missing Link to Sustainability. I totally agree with him.
Hmm.
We talked about the 17 sustainability areas, right?
Hmm.
Money is the missing link. Unless we address the structure of money, then the problems will only
I
get
think one of the important things is to also define, like, we use the term money and currency interchangeably.
interchangeably.
However,
Yeah,
they're two different phenomenons.
correct. Yes, yeah, correct.
So I think that is something that is very that the nuance of that
Correct.
must be taught and understood,
Yes.
not only from I think the students of economy,
Yeah.
but also like the students of Islamic finance and Islamic
Yes.
banking and so on and so
Correct.
forth.
Betul. We know there are two different things can be clarified. Money is a bit wider than currency. You're right.
Hmm.
Mm. So this is just to show what happened in Malaysia also. I just want to show you what happened in Malaysia. This is a picture from a book by Malaysian Numismatic Heritage by the Central Bank of Malaysia. It's a very nice book. The
Hmm.
monetary history in Malaysia. You see, this is by the seaside. You see the Arab traders, these are Javanese traders from Indonesia, these are
Hmm.
Chinese traders. So they're all meeting and then they are transacting by the seaside, which is supposed to be the port. At that
Hmm.
time, you see the money in Malaysia, basically gold coins, yeah? Gold coins
Hmm.
at the time, in Malaysia. And before the colonialists came to Malaysia, this was the money. You see, this is 1 ringgit. This is the original 1 ringgit, the Malaysian. Even many
Hmm.
Malaysians, they don't know this fact. Or this was the original 1 ringgit. It was a 20-gram silver coin.
Hmm.
You know, if you notice in Jawi here, it's mentioned here, satu means one, satu ringgit, one,
Oh,
and
Satu Ringgit. Okay.
satu ringgit, and this is
Oh,
one.
so that's written in Arabic. It's not written
Yeah, 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 yeah,
in like,
correct.
so
Satu,
currently like Malay is written in like the Latin
correct.
scripture, right?
That's after the colonialists came and they changed the Arabic
The structure, yeah.
scripture into the Roman scripture.
Hmm.
And this is also written in Chinese because we had a lot of Chinese traders at the time, you know.
Hmm.
And this is the, gold coin. It's called kupang,
Hmm.
0.6 gram of gold. And this is what we call kijang, This animal looks like a small deer, tiny deer, which we find in the Malaysian jungles, So
No.
and this is the logo of this Malaysian Central Bank now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So these were the money, gold coins and silver coins were the money. But what happened when the colonials came in 17 something, they settled in Malaya. Then they established Penang, Malacca, and Singapore as the state settlement. These were the major ports in Malaysia: Penang, Malacca, and Singapore.
Hmm.
They established a state settlement, and they established the first banks. They started to print pieces of paper as ringgit.
Hmm.
Imagine people, traders were using gold coins, silver coins as ringgit. When these banks, they just started their printing machine,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's ringgit now. So, so that's how the system became inflationary, and a lot of assets like properties, land, transferred ownership. To give you an example, this is I want to show you. This is the one of the examples of paper currency issued by them. The currency board at that time of Malaya, British. This is King George of VI, if I'm not mistaken. Very handsome. King.
Yeah.
So you see the paper, the note is 10,000 ringgit. At that time,
Wow.
one paper 10,000 ringgit at that time, 1 cent could buy you a one meal at that time, which means the purchasing power of this money is 10 million ringgit of today. Imagine one piece of paper printed, it has 10 million ringgit worth of purchasing power.
And it doesn't have economic power, it just have a legal power. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
It is
And the
just it
money,
is just created. So it is very interesting, Professor. I don't know if you and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let me finish
yeah,
your thought before
yeah,
I
no,
ask you a
go
question.
ahead, yeah, no problem.
No, I'm thinking about the East India Company that came to India, right? And they did something similar.
Similar, yeah. It's bad because from East India, then only they came to Malaysia. Yeah.
Right.
Because they brought all the Punjabis in Malaysia mostly, originally. They were all
Hmm.
brought to like Bengal area and the ships brought them here. So in
Oh,
Malaysia,
I see.
we call them Bengalis, but actually they are from Punjabis.
Oh, I see. I understood. Okay, 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 okay.
Right.
But
Anyway,
that's again like a lot of times people don't think of colonialism more of a political
correct.
um dimension, but it has so many multiple dimensions. And again, it was implemented like through economy as well.
Exactly. So as you can see, Brother Reza and my dear audience there, you see, if you notice in Malaysia, when they were using gold coins, silver coins at that time, the international trade between Malaysia and outside of the world were mostly provided by the Arab traders who are of Yemeni descendants, from Yemen. So we have Al-Attas, Al-Junaid, Al-Habshi, and so on. They're
Mm,
all, the traders from Yemen. Then the Indian traders from India, that time, of course, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all part of India. So the Indian traders who also came, they had marikars and they're called routers and so on. So they were providing the major international trade for Malaysia. And most of the land were occupied by the Malays. They
mm,
were involved in agriculture, in paddy, rice plantation and so on. But after this kind of money was issued, right, which gave an unfair, economic advantage to the English and who was actually financing people who do not transact in riba, which is basically the time the Chinese traders. So Muslim traders like Arab traders and Indian Muslim traders and Malaysia, you were left out from involved in the financial sector. This is called financial exclusion.
Hmm.
So when you are financially excluded for almost for 100 years, you know,
Hmm.
the Malays and this thing, we started to have the first bank account only in 1970s. When these banks were established in 1860s, about 110 years before.
Wow.
So because the Muslim traders and the Malays were financially excluded from this generally, so we lost the economic dominance in this country until today.
Hmm. Not only in this country, the whole Ummah.
Yeah, you know, economic
I mean,
dominance.
if you look at it, like, as we talked about the currencies and petroleum and everything, we are so enriched in the minerals.
Yeah, correct. So these colonials were clever. Before they gave the independence to all these nations they colonized, they made sure a riba-based central bank is established first.
Hmm.
And fiat money is the money of the which is right. And then they gave you quote unquote independence, not realizing you were never independent under the system.
Hmm.
See?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right? So this is how Malaysia, unfortunately, we are still the Malays of the only thing the Malays have in this country is now still the political power, but the other economic power is gone. But sometimes people with money, they can also control politics. So,
Absolutely. And one of the notes I have from one of your books is, uh, the that basically this monetary manipulation
mm,
is even worse than the military manipulation.
yeah, correct.
And I
This
think you write
is
that
the
in one of
major.
the
I
first
see.
chapter.
Yeah,
Yeah, where you have this chart where you explain this.
yes.
In your book. I think. Let me see what page number is that.
Mm.
This page number is 21, where you have that chart of money, debt, and the reschedule of loan, and you
Yeah,
have that workflow there.
correct.
Yes,
Mm. I also show that in different ways this thing is done, when we accept foreign currencies, foreign
right,
currencies as legal tender in your country and things like that, you're just basically giving away your economy. That's the
right.
reason, that's the reason I called it the theft of nation.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's how it is. The type of nature.
Mm.
Absolutely right.
Mm. So just let's go to the next this thing, Brother Reza. How this monetary system affects this causes the shrinking population. Yeah, of course.
Yes.
This is important. That's why I'm giving some time here.
Oh, very important.
Very
Absolutely.
important. Yeah. For example, of course.
Especially when we talk about, like, when we talk about and I'm just thinking of Surah Yusuf, where we talk about agriculture, right? And the fertility rate and man power is so important
Yeah.
for natural economy, which is to say, like, zara, agriculture and other trades,
Yeah.
manufacturing trades.
Correct. So
Please.
if this thing is we call fertility rate, money, no, fiat money and fertility rate. Why I'm using the word fertility rate? Because it is actually a data collected, economic data collected for countries called fertility rate. So it's nothing to do
Okay.
with medical infertility or anything, right? The rate is simply the number of children, average number of children per woman in the country, the woman will have within her childbearing years.
Hmm.
That's called fertility rate. This
Hmm.
number is important because let me show you. Let me show you this first. Because why the number is important? Because for a society to sustain itself,
Hmm.
sustain means the number of population must be there, providing enough workforce for the economy and so on. So it needs at
Hmm.
least an average of 2.11. This average number of children per woman.
Wow.
So 2.11 is known as the replacement rate. So the
Hmm.
average number of children has to be 2.11. So if the fertility rate falls below 2.11, it will start to cause the population to fall. So you need to take actions when it starts to fall. And if it falls until 1.3, the demographic experts say it is irreversible. The reason is, in order to reverse this number after 1.3, it will take you about one generation, which is about 70 years to reverse it, if you even this thing, So it technically become irreversible. The population will just shrink and shrink and shrink until it just collapse.
And you mentioned this is such it has become more of an economic um, constraint as well, right? Because I remember like our parents and their foreparents, you said everybody, at least in our culture, everybody used to have 6, 7, 8, 10 children,
Children,
and
yeah.
now everybody is having 2 or 3 children, right? No, like so. Basically, what we are saying here is that nobody should have less than 3 children,
Yes, correct. I
at
always
least.
I tell that to always my students. If you do not this thing, unless you are medically you have problem and so on, you're medically infertile or something like that. That means it's your responsibility to have at least 3 children. Otherwise, you have not contributed to the ummah.
Hmm, that's a very good way of putting it.
Three. So, for example, this is what Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said. Because when Singapore was facing the problem with the shrinking population, he said in his book, in 2 of his books, is there a country in this world that prospers on a declining population? If I had to identify one issue that threatens Singapore's survival the most, you see that
Hmm,
it will be this one. This man,
hmm.
I tell you, the Brother Reza, is very intelligent
Oh,
because
absolutely.
no any leader mentioned anything about the shrinking population, they said this is the number one problem for the survival of the most, you know,
Hmm.
threatens the Singapore survival the most. He said. And that's actually a lot of foresight and wisdom. And he said, I cannot
He was
solve.
no, no. He really changed, like he himself, and like how he changed Singapore is a
Correct,
case study in
correct.
itself.
This one generation only.
Excuse me. Yep.
And one American this thing advisor to Warren Buffett, he said, in fact, China also actually got advice from him. They say how to structure the economy. I'm not sure the truth of it, but this person was saying as such. But whatever it is, you see what Lee Kuan Yew says. I cannot solve the problem. I have given up. He says, I've given
Mm,
in Singapore, they get, if you give birth to a child, well, the government will give you a lot of, how many $1,000 as a gift, and then the leave they give to the mother and the paternal leave and the maternal leave, and then they even give free cruise ship, ride for graduates, hoping they'll get married, all kinds of this they tried. He
mm,
said it did not solve the problem. In
mm.
Japan, when you get a child, the government will pay the mother 2 years of salary continuously. Whatever salary you were getting in wherever you're working, that salary the government will pay you for 2 years, and you will have 2 years of leave.
We have maternity leave here and paternity leave here as well. Like whenever we have
Correct.
kids,
Mm.
yep.
But I never heard about 2 years of maternity leave, paid,
Wow.
paid maternity leave in like Japan and other, and they give a lot of money, the gift for the children. But
Mm,
the problem couldn't be solved. It's still persisting, and it's becoming worse.
mm,
Okay. And Lee Kuan Yew said Singapore will fold up if its citizens do not procreate, and they still
mm.
not procreate. I once met one of their think tank, and I said, I asked the think tank person, Singapore think tank, I asked him, so Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said this is the number one problem. So what are you all doing? He just stared at me back, nothing, because they don't know what to do. So I say the problem is monetary. The structure of the monetary system got to be addressed. And
Absolutely.
this is actually a video by but the video is not working. You can
Mm,
see in YouTube where Elon Musk says that many countries are facing the possibility of a population collapse, and that's
mm,
very very acute, and it can be very damaging, right?
mm.
To see this, normally this is how the healthy distribution should be. A
Okay.
pyramid, for you all know this. The blue are male and the pink are female, and this is the age. A lot of child, and as you go older and older, the number of people in the group falls, until this. So it'll look like a pyramid like this.
Right.
But population becomes shrinking, then it will reverse like this. This is like for Japan, 1950s, a healthy pyramid. 2005, you see, it's like becoming like a kite, it's like a wobbling already, right?
Mhm.
2055, a reverse pyramid. So very few children, but mostly are old people up here. So the old people who died, they're not being replaced by enough children, right? So this is a major problem like in Japan. So just to give you, maybe, 1960s, for example, fertility rate, the world fertility rate was 5, but now it's only 2.24. The average is
Mm.
still higher than 2.11 for the world.
Mm.
But if you see Arab world is 3.1, they are still okay, right?
Mm.
It used to be almost 7 children in 1960s, Arabs.
Mm.
European Union 2.6 and so on. See, so all this okay, but if you look at here, the numbers have gone down already 2025.
Now, I'm looking at East Asia and Pacific. Does that include Indonesia?
Which one? East Asia? Yeah.
East Asia, yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
But
wow.
you
So
put
they are
down.
like
Wait, no,
irreversible
no,
now,
no.
then. Is
East
that what it is?
Asia, we are Southeast Asia. Yes.
The last row, right?
Yeah.
You're talking East Asia and Pacific, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
I
that's
think
Indonesia, Australia,
those
New
in,
Zealand,
yeah. Correct.
Malaysia as well, probably.
Mm,
How
correct.
about China? It doesn't show for China, but that's
No, no,
very
I'll show
top.
you
That's
the individual companies here, countries here, individual countries.
mm,
You see, China, it used to be 5.8, almost 6 children in 1960s. It's now is 1.02. It's less than 1.3 already.
mm,
So less than 1.3, you cannot reverse it. You need to get immigrants from outside to save your economy,
mm,
you know. But the immigrants may come from a country that's also facing similar problems.
mm.
Correct?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
So I'm saying like nobody has actually anything above like 3.
yeah.
Like nobody has more than 3
Yeah, yeah, no.
fertility rate.
No, no. You see, for the whole thing, all these numbers, you can't even see 3 already. Even Malaysia, look, 1.53. Malaysia.
That's a problem.
But because remember, I showed you the numbers, look at the household debt,
Mm,
right? Indonesia also won 2.1, just the replacement
mm,
rate.
mm,
But the worst is South Korea, 0.75. In 2018, the South Korean government held a conference just to address this issue. So I went there to present a paper, to show how the monetary structure is linked to this. Then I did a Google survey, translated the Google survey into Korean language, and I blasted to Korea, and then I got the results right there, and I showed them. When you ask about children, what they were happy, they say they love children and so on. Children are blessings from God and so on. Then I ask how many children you like to have? 0. Then when I ask why, we can't afford.
mm,
So basically, the issue is affordability. So the shrinking population is actually a rational economic decision being made by the economic subjects.
mm,
Why? Why? It's simple because of the monetary structure, the rising living costs, price of food going up, education going up, rise of health, transportation, communication, cost of having real
mm,
children, sending them for babysitting for their, preschool and so on, so high, including retirement costs. When we retire, the cost of retirement prices also rising tremendously. In Malaysia,
because of this inflation and this,
correct.
let's call it what it is. It's an unreal economic system.
Correct. It's unreal.
You know how you have real numbers in maths and unreal numbers in maths?
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
unreal economic system.
Correct. That's good. Malaysian statistics for, our retirement funds, when people retire, their savings can only last on average for 5 years. Then they tend to live for 15 years. So for the rest of 10 years, who is going to finance? So a rational person will think like this, look, I need to save money for my retirement. So the trade-off is having children today. They don't want to have many children.
See, not only that, I think one of the things is like, and as we are talking about economy too,
Mhm.
I think the family structure has changed. right? Before we used to have like the, what we call like the combined family system, right? And
Yeah,
everybody used to live together,
correct.
and the children will take care of their elders,
Exactly.
and it'll be like a village. Like every family will have six, seven, siblings, and somebody will be a farmer, somebody will be a trader, somebody will be something else.
Right.
But that whole family structure, the, a family is a unit, the basic unit of society, right?
Correct.
One house makes a street, like, and from one street you become a town, from a town you become a city, from a city you become a country, right?
Correct.
So every house, every neighborhood, the the unit of human economy is the family structure, if you will, you
Yes.
know.
You,
And yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting point that you raised, but about retirement. But what I'm trying to say is, like, in the older days,
hmm,
they didn't have retirement plans.
yes. The younger generations, others will support them.
Right.
But today, the younger generations also faced by the same similar problem. They find it difficult to help this thing. So they send
I,
them.
I think you know what, and I'll call myself included in that, that
Hmm,
we are facing exponential problem.
exactly.
It's not even the same. It's exponential. You know.
Hmm. There is no social security, actually. The word
Mm,
is there's no social security guaranteed for uh, the people, even as you grow older and so on. Even many elderly people become homeless. That's very sad, actually, in this kind of system.
mm, mm,
You
mm,
know, and as you mentioned, the word the extended family structure collapses, and people become individualistic. They just want to
mm,
survive on their own.
mm,
That is the effect of this. So what I was trying to say, with the rising cost of living, rising cost of homes, and the homes also become smaller and smaller, and at
mm,
the same time you become indebted. You have debt all around you. So
mm,
how to, it's an economic rational decision to have lesser and lesser children. Like in
mm,
in a country like in Japan and South Korea, the younger generation, they're not even looking at marriage anymore.
mm,
Mm. And at the same time, when the fertility rate collapses, then you will face aging society, and that will change the structure of your production in the economy too. If before you used to produce diapers for children, now slowly you will be moving away from that and producing diapers for adults. You
right.
know,
And that is true here. That's what we is happening here as well.
yeah. And another major problem is you would face labor shortages in every sector of the economy, right? And last, it has actually a national security issue, because in
Mm,
old days, if you have resources and then most of your people are poor, old, then forces from outside will somehow come and invade you and take over the country and things like that, isn't it?
mm,
So even though we have international laws and things like that today, some kind of structure like that will happen. When people die, then migrations will take place, and the structure of the country, the demographic structure will change. You know, so these are
mm,
some of the effects of shrinking population. Yeah.
mm,
So let me, okay. So I just want to show you this one. This is by one in a TED talk by Rainer Strack. He showed that, with the labor shortages predicted, this is
mm.
20, countries are generally, few of them are facing already in red, like South Korea has been red even in 2020. But by 2030, you see, almost all are in red already.
That means, like, they don't have anybody to work.
Work here. So you will face serious labor shortages in this structure. you know. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has
Mm,
been, if you take care of your, don't go into riba, at least he'll give you some AI and all those things to sustain yourself with it. But you see what, like, for example, this is in Japan. It's called a Henna Hotel in Japan, 100% manned by robots. You know, you see the receptionist is a dinosaur. And then, they say a muscular looking robot will be standing by to carry your bag to the room. So it's entirely,
yeah,
using
but, like,
robots.
I mean, the customers will not be robots.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you make a hotel by robots, robots will not come to, like, you need humans to fill those.
Exactly. So what I was saying, look, so this is not a solution to the shrinking population. Even if you go to restaurants, it's the robots that will come and bring your food and everything in many restaurants now, right? So the issue is this is not solving the problem, because as people die, then you cannot have a country full of robots, right? So we need to look at what is the major root cause of these things, and we need to solve. And then, if I may, this thing, I say it is basically the monetary system. If you remember in 2008 crisis in the US, right?
Mm,
Yeah, after the crisis, Alan Greenspan, who was almost about 30 years, he was helming the Federal Reserve there. This is what he said: I had been going on for 40 years with considerable evidence. You see, considerable evidence that it was working very well. You remember when we asked, initially to look everything is good, right? For
mm,
creating a good economy and things like that. 40 years, he says. He said, but the whole intellectual edifice, however, collapsed in the summer of last year. I asked people, economic experts. Alan Greenspan said this. So what intellectual edifice he was telling? Bro? Did anybody write about it? Nobody has said anything, but what was the cause that he was mentioning?
No, I mean, mostly here, people, when you talk about 2000 here in the United States, everybody was just talking about the mortgages and the subprime mortgages. Nobody is talking about this central banking system,
Central bank. So yes. So basically, he's saying there's a flaw in his governing ideology, he said,
Hmm.
and he left after that. That's when all these things started, so if you ask me as a economist or monetary economist, what is the fundamental flaw in the present monetary system? I will say there is no measure of value.
Hmm.
Mm. So what do you mean by no measure of value? If you want to measure length, okay, we use let's say meter.
Hmm.
1 meter in America and 1 meter in Malaysia is same. 1 meter in China is same. It's a constant. So if I buy
Hmm.
some clothing from China, I say I want 10 meters. I know exactly the length I'm going to get because the
Hmm.
meter is constant. So it's a measure of length meter. If
Hmm.
you say 1 kilogram, 1 kilogram in America, 1 kilogram in Malaysia, 1 kilogram in China or anywhere, it's the same weight. So if I buy 10 kilograms of cotton from somewhere, I know exactly the weight I'm going to get. Even though
Hmm.
it was yesterday or today, the order was made. So across time and space, these are standard for measuring weight, measuring length, and so on. When we use money, money is a measure of wealth. When I say ringgit or dollar, so I want to buy a certain amount. This is the house. The value of this house is how many $1,000 and so on. But the problem is there is no definition of a dollar. So the dollar is being traded in the stock in the currency market. Every
Hmm.
moment its value is changing. Every second its value is changing compared to other currencies and so on. So currency, the dollar, this thing, the rupiah, they are not measure of a value because they're not constant. We
Hmm.
need to keep the something that is measuring value. It has to be a constant. So if you say dinar is a 2.97, let's say, gram of gold, 95. So that amount of this thing, the gold, is fixed, the dinar. So if I want to say, okay, what is the price of this handphone? I will say, oh, okay, this is about 2 dinar. So exactly I know how much of gold I'm going to give.
Hmm.
So it becomes a constant. So when you fix,
Under-
especially real thing, natural things using gold, silver, it becomes a constant. There's a book written by a professor from University of Berkeley, California, Roy Jastram. He wrote a book called The Golden Constant. So he took
Hmm.
about 400 years of data of commodities and things like that, and then he priced against gold, using gold and priced them. He found it's a constant. And so that's why he named his book The Golden Constant. I had one thesis done by taking 2,000 years of data, and he checked for America, Europe, the Caliphate, you know, for all these countries, he tested the price of things for 2,000 years using gold and silver. He also found the same thing, just like Roy Justin found. Pricing were constant. That means when you price things in gold and silver, prices do not fluctuate like crazy today, and they do not go up constantly like inflation of today. So that is the advantage of pricing in gold and silver commodity. So when you one example we always give is from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It is mentioned when the Prophet giving 1 dinar to go and buy a sheep for slaughtering. That was the price during the time of the Prophet ﷺ of gold a sheep, 1 dinar. So today also when you price, if you have a dinar, you can buy a sheep of gold, almost in any country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You see, so if you had the dinar of the time until today, you'll find it has preserved its purchasing power just as it was 1,400 years ago. But in its
When you
fiat,
say dinar, that is like how much does it weigh? Like what is a dinar
a
and
dinar,
dirham?
dinar is a pure gold, right? Hold on, it's 4.25 grams, 4.25 grams of gold,
Is 1 dinar.
1 dinar.
And how about a dirham?
Dirham is almost 2.97 grams of pure silver.
3.2.
Almost 3 grams, yeah.
Mm.
You see that? So we use the dirham for small transactions, to change to small transactions. But when people want to buy a home or large amount, they use the dinar. So when you use that, it becomes fair. If I take something from you, good or services, I give you a equal something, of value. The both of us agree on that this is the price of exchange. But if I give you a piece of paper, which is paper money, today you accept. The reason you accept is you know that if you use it for purchasing other people or you go to the supermarket, they will honor it. That's the reason why if I pay you in paper money, today we accept. And it's also a legal tender forced upon us by the government. But the unfair thing for the paper money comes, the first person who uses it when it's newly printed, the first person who uses fiat money has an unfair benefit. It's called the Sinoraj, the benefit of the Sinoraj. So that is the reason you and me, we cannot print money at home. It's illegal. We can be arrested for counterfeiting and things like that. We cannot go and argue,
Yeah,
no,
it makes sense, right? If, for example, if I have my product, let's say I'm making this cup, right? I should be able to take it from my own currency.
yeah.
You know?
Yes, So that is we cannot go and argue, or I printed this money because everybody loves money, right?
Yeah.
So, isn't it? So because of the unfair benefit. So the unfair benefit of the first use of paper money and coins is the central banks, they get it. Basically, we can say it's the government. But that's only 5%. What about the money created by commercial banks? 95% of money is created by the commercial bank in the form of loans. So how come we give them the benefit of the Sinoraj? They're private banks anyway, privately owned, right? So this is where the problem starts. That we have given a right to some people in the economy to create money out of nothing. For the rest of the people, it's considered as counterfeiting. See that? So we need to bring the So Imam Al-Ghazali in his Ihya al-Mudin, say Allah Almighty created gold and silver to serve as a measure of value and to facilitate exchange of goods and things. When I first read this as a student, when I read this, I asked myself why the Imam didn't say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created gold and silver as money. But it only occurred to me in the later period that the most important function of money is actually as measure of value, because for every
Subhanallah.
transaction, you don't need actually money. We can do netting. For example, if I buy a book from you for $100, and then you get a handphone from me for $100, we can exchange these two goods without having money at all. The
Right.
most important things, we
Barter system, right?
Yes, we valued them using something that is stable, a measure of value.
Hmm.
It occurred to me only after many years that in economics, that is the major function that is needed, because in international trade and so forth, a lot of the international trade can be net off actually.
Hmm.
So that's why to one of the solutions to this, my favorite solution to all this is a netting system based on gold, silver, commodities as measure of value. That's that
Hmm.
will do wonders in my but that we can have a separate talk just on that, how it is can be.
No, it's very, very important talk. Very,
Yeah.
very important talk. Yep.
So, the result, if you ask what is the solution to all this we had discussed, if you remember the graph I showed earlier, exponentially growing money and debt, the red line, and the green line, the real economy. So, what we need to do is we need to have the monetary sector to grow in tandem with the real economy. They must go in parallel. So how do we do that to make the monetary sector grow in parallel with the real economy? So we need to do the two things. One is to make money part of the real economy. That means money had to come from the real economy, which means it had to be commodity-backed money.
Hmm.
But later I found out whenever, even though we say it's commodity-backed, it doesn't have to be a real commodity. It can also be services,
Okay.
standardized services. In Kenya, they have issued mobile money using your prepaid amounts in your mobile as
Hmm.
money,
Okay.
prepaid. So the when you use telephone, we have to pay for the calls, isn't it?
Hmm.
We can use those prepaid this thing as a time for also as money. Okay, but that's just to keep it in it. The real that means when I use the word real, it can be goods and services, but
Hmm.
majority is going to be goods. And most of the goods that are traded in commodity markets can be used actually in a way. Those who are traded in the commodity markets are very well defined.
Hmm.
Once you know very well defined, when you transact as money, you know exactly what you're going to get if you redeem. You know?
Right.
Yeah. That's number one. Money got to be real. Number two, is actually related to the real money. That's actually adopting a real measure of value. That means the measure of value got to be something that's real. Number three, we got to abolish interest charges. So there are two components here. One is interest, which is we all know the charging of interest is riba. The other one is the nature of money. The
Hmm.
money itself got to be real. Two things, right? So once we do solve these two, this graph will become automatically in what do you call that? Parallel.
Market reset, it will be deflation.
Exactly. Well,
Hmm.
temporarily it will be deflation because of you are moving to that. After that, it will be
Right.
constant, just like Roy Jastram and others found. Once the system settles, it's all will be just what do you call that? Technically there will be no inflation. Inflation
Hmm.
will happen because of a real reason. For example, let's say in Malaysia, there's a big flood, it destroyed a lot of paddy crop.
Crops.
But then in that season, the price of rice will go up. Next season, it will go back to its normal price.
Professor, I have a question, and since everybody's talking about it, and we are talking about the fertility rate as well,
Okay,
and there's like so many people talking about like, we need to
okay,
control population and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
We have enough food in the world to feed everybody,
Food, yes, correct.
right? So we don't have an issue with the population. We just
Yeah,
have the issue with the distribution, if you will.
correct. Exactly. Exactly. Because as I mentioned to you, this system is causing few people to become extremely wealthy at the
Hmm.
expense of the rest.
Hmm.
But the rest, they do not have the purchasing power to buy the excess food and everything that can be produced. So we are at the
Hmm.
mercy of the wealthy, actually, the elite.
Hmm.
So now, even if sorry to say, even the game that is being played in the international politics with the tariffs and things like that is basically the game with the elites, including even the collapse of the stock markets and so on. They want to they're trying their best to maintain the present system so that they can continue
Hmm.
to quote unquote rule the world, economic.
Hmm.
So that's the reason. If the solution is you're right, if you ask me, we need to solve this economic problem and redistribute back real wealth back to the people. To start back, reset the economy. Then you let whoever works hard, you will make more money, you will become richer. That's fine. But you need to reset the economy for everybody. A complete write-off debt, the biblical debt cancellation. Biblically, every how many years they used to cancel debt and free slaves. What we have to do in today. Because a lot of people who are actually now stuck with the banking system with a huge amount of loans, debt, they are basically slaves. We have brought them. So we need to solve this and global economic system. We need to put back everyone on give them a clean slate to start with. That's what I believe in now. Because almost 40, 50 years of fiat money, it has created a huge imbalance in the income and wealth of the people. People say, oh, this is taking money from the rich and giving to the poor. No, it is the rich also, many of them came rich because of the fiat money system, So when you do adjustment, we will not disadvantage the rich. We will make sure everybody is okay. And then everybody is okay, and then we let the system after that continue. Whoever works hard, whoever this thing, you will make more
And
money.
there's always people, like not everybody's always rich. I mean, when we talk about and it is interesting when I was looking, like, if you talk about economic history,
Yeah.
the only time there was an economic equilibrium was within the Islamic system, because we had interest-free system and we had zakah, like at the time of Umar II, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, where we had people who had zakah, but nobody was there to accept the zakah, because that basically means that there was an economic equilibrium. Everybody was rich.
Correct.
So, so there will come a time where everybody will be rich.
Rich, yes, I believe so. And I believe that will come not through Islamic banking system that many people are promoting.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yes, but it's going to come from the Waqaf system.
Waqaf and the Baitul Mal.
Yes, but Waqaf and Baitul Mal, yes. So that is where it's going to come.
We should do a talk on that too sometime soon, inshallah.
I can give I have an interesting model for Waqaf. I learned from one interesting person. I spent 1 year with the person to study his Waqaf model. I can share. It's a very interesting, and in Indonesia also they have, and others. We can, one day we can discuss on the Waqaf model. Yeah. So that's and then so if you ask me in academically, what is the solution needed? Two. One, when we talk about the monetary is real money, we need to go back to gold back, or silver back, or commodity back money. Number two is our economic transactions must be based on risk sharing principles. There will be no more risk based, that means a risk free economy, but transactions are all based on risk sharing principles. So this is what we need to do, and a lot of things are happening globally. Okay, I would like to highlight on this. Even though we recognize this economically, this is what we need to do. It's not easy to do, especially the real money. Why? Because this one comes is highly linked to global politics. Global politics. So if you are not strong enough, if you do not have the military power to implement this, then you may not be able to implement, and you better don't. So this is I'm not saying what I'm saying. Don't do this. We need to recognize this is the solution, but we need to recognize few more steps before we implement this. You look at what happened to Saddam Hussein. Why? Because the US and some countries today, where we are using their currency as the major reserve currency, right? Dollar is still a major reserve currency. So they do not, US definitely would not want us to go to gold today. Otherwise, the dollar will lose its position as the global reserve currency, right? You're threatening its position. And if you threaten means you are threatening the hegemony of the US. Right? So if you are unable, if you want to threaten the hegemony of the US, then you better be strong yourself, isn't it? So you look what happened to Iraq when Saddam Hussein simply wanted to sell the Iraqi oil in euros. And that's threatening the petrodollar arrangement.
But it didn't like the petrodollar now is delinked. Or is it still true? I think they did it last year, right? It was delinked because of BRICS.
Yes, correct. You see, why the BRICS, couldn't have what do you call that emerged until people realized recently that America is not strong militarily as believed to be, as we believe to be. For example,
Mm,
especially in Ukraine, the Ukraine war changed everything. Actually, in my opinion.
mm,
So when
mm,
the Ukraine war just continued and continued, then people realized, hey, the US is not as powerful as we thought. Then for example, and then they put sanctions on Russia, and Russia immediately linked its ruble to gold for just for a short period, 6 months or 1 year. The linking of the ruble to the gold, it forced America to increase its interest rates few times, and still
mm,
then they realize the game is about to be over.
mm,
Then only the BRICS all started to become, stronger. They started to have a more courageous in their actions. Is it?
mm,
Uh, and Libya also, Gaddafi,
mm,
he threatened by planning for a pan-African currency backed by gold.
mm,
That's even a stronger threat to the dollar's hegemony.
mm.
So this is the thing, you can't do it individually. It's not advisable for countries to go a goal at this thing individually. That's what will happen, like what happened to Iraq and Gaddafi in Libya.
Mm.
But when it is
Collectively.
like BRICS, then it's something for the US to consider, is it? So what is threatening everything that's happening, a major shift in global shift is going to happen. If you ask me, it is happening in BRICS.
Absolutely.
So I agree with even Malaysian government. You join BRICS. You cannot do this kind of policies on your own. Join
Mm,
BRICS, and then you go for netting systems. You
mm.
can use multiple currencies. You
And I
know,
think the one of the thing advantages of BRICS is it does not have like a single, system, single currency, right?
currency, yes. And whatever solution they're going to come, it will have some component of gold inside.
Mm.
You know,
Some kind of real money. Mm,
yes, they have to start small like that because so that slowly, and then you move away from fiat money,
mm,
so that the transition is doesn't shock. Otherwise some countries might get a bigger shock than others and so on.
mm.
So you need to consider.
Transitional is not, yeah.
Yes. Move slowly, gradually until the system is
Mm,
in place.
mm,
So I always believe in multiple solutions to be put in place so that we don't shock the system, unnecessarily. We can have real money like this. We can have gold. We can have
mm,
petroleum-backed money. Some time ago, Japan asked Malaysia to come up with what do you call that? Monetize palm oil, because they import a lot of palm oil for their jet engines, jet
mm,
planes. So we can do
mm,
that. So let multiple monetary system that are
mm.
based on real systems work,
Commodities.
so that anything happens to one system, the others can continue. So you increase
Mm,
the resilience of the system, even
mm,
though you may lose a little bit on the efficiency. you
mm,
know Natural systems, people have studied biological systems. They all give up little bit of efficiency for resilience, so that whatever
mm,
happens, they can continue.
mm.
They can continue life. So
Resilience is important, right?
yeah, so we should structure it like that.
Mm,
Resilience is what should be the priority. So we call it resilience, stability, or sustainability, right?
mm,
Uh,
mm,
So these are the things that we need to focus. So see, these are some of the news I found. China sees new world order with oil benchmark backed by gold. You see,
mm.
oil benchmark. Uh,
Petro
the
yuans, okay.
petrol yuans, oil trading using petrol yuans. The Russia sets, fixed the ruble 5,000 ruble to 1 gram of gold. This was 2022 as a response to the American sanctions and so on.
Mm,
Right. So one spike to gold, the Russian ruble bounces back. Right? So in 2003, I was asked to organize this conference.
mm,
And the Central Bank of Malaysia paid because at that time, Tun Mahathir was asking us, Malaysia, to do a trade settlement, international trade settlement using gold.
mm.
So goal in international trade, I organized this conference officiated by Tun Mahathir, paid by central bank, but after we have a nice solution, I have a nice solution with this thing, but we were actually warned by, you know who lah, huh? We were warned not to go ahead with this.
Mhm.
So Malaysia backed off. So in my opinion, is right because we don't have an army strong enough to counter. Otherwise,
Mhm.
we might have become another Iraq, So,
Mhm.
but it's good. We have solutions ready. But any system that is unsustainable, ultimately it will collapse itself.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
absolutely, it will collapse
It's
itself.
like a sand castle, right?
Exactly, and then people look for solutions at that time.
Mhm.
So at that time has come, in my opinion, it has come.
Mhm.
So even after when Tun Mahathir became the prime minister for the second time in 2001, he also said Malaysia proposes common East Asia currency pegged to gold. So he
Mhm.
started to talk about pegging currency back to gold again. When he became. So these are
Mhm.
some of the systems we can. Now today in Malaysia we have like e-wallets where you have Malaysian currency and gold at the same time. So you can go for back and forth between fiat currency and gold.
Yeah,
For
great. Yeah.
so these kind of things are good. So
Mhm.
and Robert Alexander Mandel, the Nobel laureate in 1999. That was 2 years. Yeah, he was a 1999 Nobel laureate, but 2 years before that, he said this: gold would make a comeback in the international monetary system in the 21st century. You see how foresighted
Mhm.
he was, in
Absolutely. That
19.
was 20, that was so many years ago. Yep.
Yeah, correct. And then again in 2021, which is only about 4 years ago, he said, Professor Robert Mandela just gold convertibility for the euro, the currency which he fathered, as well as for the dollar. So they
Mhm.
all can see the importance of backing the currencies by gold if you want to, get back some stability, sustainability and justice into the economic system. Yeah. So I also not only talk. I have a movement called Movement for Monetary Justice. I founded it many years ago, but now it is being held by a friend of mine.
Mhm.
This is what we believe. We have fiat money issued by commercial banks mostly. We
Mhm.
need to move to fiat money issued 100% by the government. That means
Mhm.
no more money being issued by commercial banks.
Mhm.
So this we can call that as public banking, sovereign money, or the theory behind is called modern money theory and so on. So these
Mhm.
are the second step that we support. Even though it's not goal yet, from here we support this because it's
Mhm.
go in stages, yeah, so that you don't shock the.
The
Well,
system, yeah.
central banks are trying to move to CBDC. It's called central bank digital currency. But if
Mhm.
the central bank digital currency is controlled by the government, we support. But if it is controlled by the central bank with outside forces, we completely opposite because
But
it's
do you think, like, again, that digital currency from the central bank, that has to be, again, as you mentioned, asset backed? Not at this stage, maybe
correct.
later.
Yeah. Finally, it has to be asset back. But what they're proposing is not asset back.
Mm.
Even fiat money also. The
Mm.
second stage we are proposing this for countries the reason is we think that if money needs to be created out of nothing, then it must be publicly owned, not privately owned like the commercial banks.
Mm. Okay.
That's why number two. Number three, after
Mm.
you come there, that the 100% digital fiat money, they think, but with netting arrangements, because netting will solve a lot of issues with the monetary.
Professor, what do you mean by netting arrangements? What does that mean?
Netting is, you have, for example, banks, like you write checks every day, and there are many different banks in the country, right? In the evening, at the end of the day, they will see, okay, how much of my customers you should check to you, and how much your customers you should check to my.
Right, right, right.
They will do netting. It is clearing house.
Okay. Okay,
That
okay, okay.
clearing is the netting process, but we can do that even for trade. So what the central
Absolutely.
banks, the commercial banks are doing, we bring it down to apply it for even companies, individuals,
Mm.
and so on. So a lot of things can be net off. So people would
Mm.
not, what do you call, they have shortage of money. A lot of
Mm.
what do you call, people, unemployment, things like that. You see in the economy, people sitting no job and so on. It's actually caused by the lack of money circulation in the economy. If you ask the unemployment guy, do you want to work? Yeah, he said, I want work. Some people even put up the notice, right? We'll work for food, right? They want to work. So what is stopping them from working is actually the monetary system. But if you have a netting system, it will allow him to go and work. And when he works in the system, he will get a credit. Then he will go to the supermarket and he will take whatever he wants from the supermarket, and the supermarket will get a credit. His account will be debited, and it will just disappear. So transactions can take place without use of money. Netting. That's a very powerful way of bringing liquidity to the economy, and reducing unemployment and so forth. One day I can give a talk just on netting. Yeah, I can go on.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. And then the last is all this digital and everything. It must be gold-backed money or cryptocurrencies with netting arrangement. I put gold here, but ultimately, as I mentioned to you, when I use gold, it's actually real money. That means it can be gold, it can be silver, it can be wheat, it can be palm oil, all.
Right.
Let's have multiple real money systems working.
As basically like physical assets, right? I mean,
exactly.
Commodities.
Correct. So then, Reza ends my talk. I will show, let's leave our world a better place for the next generation.
Inshallah. And that is.
Rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh to everyone.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Professor. It was so insightful and so timely. And these topics I know have been going on for such a long time. But like the impact of this system on our economy, on ourselves and our ummah cannot be understated. I think and one of the things I totally believe is when we talk about colonialism, we talk about a lot of external factors, but like one of the internal factors that we have as Muslims is that we are part of this riba-based system, which is a war against Allah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Exactly.
And no matter what we do, whether we do it politically, whether we do it economic, whatever we do, until we stop this, we will keep on going down.
Totally.
So like this is such an important.
Riba is the only issue where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala threatens believers with war.
Subhanallah, and may Allah open our eyes.
In Sahih Bukhari, I remember mentioned by, if I'm not mistaken, is by Anas bin Ibn Malik. The last verse to be revealed in the Quran is also about riba, the verse on riba. To me, that shows how important for Muslims to address that issue. That's the last.
And also Khutbah al-Hajjat al-Wida, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, particularly in Khutbah Hajjat al-Wida, as you mentioned, like it is a process.
Correct.
But like we have to at least start working towards that process.
Correct.
And we are not working we are not the main problem we have is we don't even see that as a problem.
Correct. So some of the major issues that we need to do is one is monetary issue. And then housing is a basic necessity for people, Then food security, that's an important thing because and education and integrated education. Integrated education is very important, and that integrated education must start from preschool.
Absolutely.
That's one of the areas I'm actually doing research on.
Well, that's what we, when we talk about it and, we had this discussion, that is the reason we have built our platform, like, Edify Education. When we call it, this is all integrated education. And like when we talk about Edify just means that, we are nurturing our students or our next generation or our children with moral, spiritual, and intellectual mentorship.
Correct.
And so that is like, inshallah, like it is so like, we haven't discussed that, but certainly like, the purpose of our platform is that to have, what I call like post-colonial education or decolonialized education.
Education, very good.
That is if we want to, discuss one, if it is one thing, then we have to
I have a entire presentation on that actually.
We will definitely talk about that, inshallah. So
very good. We can
talk.
And the last one is, well, you mentioned that you yourself mentioned that we need to look at the Waqaf-based economic system.
Right.
And Baitul Mal.
Baitul Mal. Baitul Mal is like, what we today call like a treasury. It is,
Yes, exactly.
I think, it is like a trust system. It's a public trust.
Yes,
Baitul
manages.
Mal, it is a public trust.
Correct.
Absolutely. And certainly we will definitely, inshallah, talk about that.
And the Baitul Mal and Wakaf system finances most of the thing. For example, health in the economy, education in the economy. If you notice, like places like, I'm not sure in Pakistan, I'm sure you have, because but I know from Malaysia, some of our students, they go to like Nahdlatul Ulama in Lucknow, India, or Deoband, India, you know. Like
Yeah.
my friend here is a professor. He studied in Lucknow, Nahdlatul Ulama. This is entirely financed by Wakaf. The
Cool.
school, the maintenance of the school, the salary of the teaching staff, everybody's salary, right? Including the hostel and for the students. He says they send food 3 times on tiffin carriers for the students to their rooms, 3 times per day. All because there's Wakaf working behind.
Endowments, right? It is very, very important to discuss that.
Yeah. So the kind of thing for health also, guaranteed. And then like for old age, taking care of the elderly. So you wouldn't face like what you are facing in the current system, homelessness,
Right.
this thing. So that's why the developing the Wakaf system to provide social security for everyone is very important.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so much, Professor. Again, I said, like, thanks for taking such a long time. I don't know, we had initially thought about just 45 minutes or an
Yeah, it's
hour,
gonna be
and now we
2 hours.
are over about two and a
2 hours.
half, 2 hours and some more. But
Alhamdulillah.
it is, thank you so much again for
Thank you
your
so much.
time
Jazakallah khair.
and for educating us on this, and like, having these critical discussions, and these discussions are going on like in a lot of intellectual circles. So thank you so much for that, and inshallah we'll continue these discussions on the on the topics that we discuss, Waqf and netting system, and we'll try to benefit from you in every single way we can, education,
Thank you very much,
inshallah.
Brother Reza. Thank
Thank
you very much for inviting me. And also, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. Yeah,
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
take care. Assalamu alaikum.